Right. Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. So welcome everybody. Thank you again for coming. This is the second of our two-part series of Hilchot Purim. We're now in Shavua Shechalvo Purim, right? That's the it's coming up at the end of the week. I'm not going to remind you to sign up for the Mishloach Manot initiative this week because it's too late. If you didn't sign up, why didn't you sign up? You missed the deadline. And I think you missed the deadline to sign up for the Purim Suda as well, but everybody's already signed up, I'm sure. So that's okay. So let's talk about, we're going to do something very ambitious this morning, which is we're going to discuss possibly the most complicated sugya that exists in Hilchot Purim. Now, considering that it gets even more complicated because we're dealing with Purim Mishulash. But considering that the next Purim Mishulash is only going to be in 20 years, if we don't get it right this morning, we've got 20 years to think about it. So I think we can handle that. But what I want to talk about is, again, I mentioned last week that if the halachot of Purim Mishulash are Hilchot Mashiach, because in our calendar the only place where we can have Purim Mishulash, I mean, going back to when we had the calendar al pi Riyah, according to witnesses, and Yud Daled could have fallen out on Shabbat, so you could have had Purim Mishulash anywhere. Nowadays, Yud Daled can't be on Shabbat, only Tetvav can be on Shabbat, and therefore this only happens in Yerushalayim. So all the dinim of Shushan Purim are really only relevant in Yerushalayim. That's why I say for thousands of years, for most of the generations, these halachot did not apply. But when we find this, when we have a very, very complicated sugya in the Gemara, what about what's called ben krach shalach le'ir or ben ir shalach le'krach? People have already asked me about it on the way in, right? The only city we have what we consider to be today out of definite, not out of suffix, but out of definite, to be a krach, which means the cities which were walled cities, and therefore Purim is celebrated a day later, that is Yerushalayim. Anywhere else, Tel Aviv, Beit Shemesh, Modi'in, whatever you want, that is going to be considered what we call an ir, as opposed to a krach, krachina mukafin chomar versus ir, which is a rare prazot. We talk about ben ir, we talk about where Purim is celebrated on Yud Daled. Now the question that comes up is, what if a person is on Yud Daled in one of the cities and is on Tetvav in a different one of the cities? You go from Yerushalayim to Modi'in, or from Modi'in to Yerushalayim, or Cheshmonim, or wherever it is. Okay, at what point do I determine what my shiur and what my obligation is for the mitzvot of Purim? Now, it could be, there are four possibilities. A person could be obligated on Yud Daled, a person could be obligated on Tetvav, a person could be obligated on both, Yud Daled and Tetvav, or a person could be obligated on neither, Yud Daled nor Tetvav. So we have to see how that works. The fact that it's Purim Mishulash this year makes it even more complicated in a way, and it makes it less complicated in a way. It makes it less complicated. Let's start off with that before I know everybody's going to get very worried, with an introduction like that. But this year, the easy part is the Megillah and Matanot Levyonim. We discussed it last week. Won't repeat everything. Otherwise, I'll get accused of having a reruns of this year. But what we said, that certainly the two mitzvot of Kriyat Megillah and Levyonim, everybody does at the same time. Everybody does on Thursday night. Everybody does on Friday morning. The Megillah. And Matanot Levyonim is on Friday. So therefore, wherever you are, wherever you're planning on staying or planning on sleeping or going or whatever, so you need to hear the Megillah on Thursday night. You need to hear the Megillah on Friday morning. For us in Yerushalayim, it's very, very easy. Wherever you are, wherever you hear it, whoever you hear it from, as long as the person who is chayav in reading the Megillah, that is fine. That is fine. The question is going to be regarding the other mitzvot, regarding Al Nisim. When do we say Al Nisim? When do we have Asuda? When do we give Mishloach Manot? Right? And as we discussed last week, again, if a person is in Yerushalayim, I live in Yerushalayim, I'm going to be in Yerushalayim for all the days of Purim, so it's easy. Al Nisim is on Shabbat. And by the way, that's why Al Nisim isn't up on the board yet, even though on Shabbat we have to say Al Nisim, because we'll be davening here and then Thursday night and Friday, and then we don't want people to get confused. But Al Nisim will be on the board for Shabbat, don't worry. But we say Al Nisim on Shabbat, and we have the Suda on Sunday, right? And we have Mishloach Manot on Sunday. That's in Yerushalayim. That's easy enough. However, if part of the time, what if Shabbat I'm not going to be in Yerushalayim, or Sunday I'm not, or part of Thursday, or part of Friday, etc. That's the topic. That's the topic of the shiur today, with a few other different bits and pieces that will help us to understand. So, by way of introduction, let me read to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole Megillah, but Perek Tet of Megillat Esther is really the source where all this comes from. Perek Tet, we're right at the end. The final two chapters, very interesting. The final two chapters of the Megillah. So the final chapter, Perek Yud, is only 3 verses. So everybody asks the question, what is this chapter doing here? The story's over, everything's finished. We find out that Achashverosh puts taxes, everybody boos, right? Because there's no more Hamans, but you've got Masa, everybody can boo for the tax. We can all agree on that. What's that got to do with the Purim story? We might talk about that tomorrow in the Lunch and Learn, but that's not for now. But before that, you have Perek Tet. Now again, you get the Perek Tet, essentially most of the story is finished, right? Haman has been hanged, he's no longer around. Everybody is looking for the last few mentions of the word Haman, right? You want to find the last Haman to make the noise. So we aren't necessarily paying attention. This is also the part of the story that got censored when we were growing up and learning the story, because this is the part we don't really like to talk about, which is after Haman is killed, the Purim story is not over. Remember, Haman had a whole army of Amalekites and anti-Semites all over the empire who wanted to go and kill the Jews, and that decree is still there. And what happened was the happy ending of the Purim story was not that the decree to kill the Jews was rescinded, because once the decree has been signed and sealed with the ring of the king, he can't take it back. So in all that he did was he issued another decree, and the decree was the Jews can fight back. And the Jews fought back, and there was a war, and thousands of people were killed. Like I say, this is the part that I don't like to translate, don't like to teach us. But in any event, that's what happened. So yeah, the Megillah goes through the story, and it tells us what happened, and it tells us that there was a difference between the city of Shushan and everywhere else in the empire, right? So reading through just a brief synopsis of the parak, it says, right, on the 13th of Adar, that was the day when everything happened. This was the day on which the enemies of the Jews were meant to come and kill us and wipe us out. And this is the famous everything was turned around, and rather than them killing us, we killed them. That was the war. That was on the 13th. That was on Yud Gimel Adar. And then on the next day, on the 14th of Adar, is the day when the Jews rested. However, at this point, on the 14th, so it says, the king comes to Esther in Shoshana Bila, etc. And he says, King says to Esther, what is your request now? What do you want? What do you require? Says Esther to the king, give us another day, but the Jews in Shushan need another day. The war's not over yet. Okay. And therefore, etc. So then, once this is all over, so the Megillah tells us as follows. Okay. Hayudim ha-prazim. Prazim means, again, we're talking about Arei ha-prazim. These are the open cities. היהודים הפרזים יושבים בערי הפרזות, עושים את יום 14 לחודש אדר שמחה ומשתה ויום טוב ומשלוח מנות איש לרעהו. The day, the 14th of Adar, there is a day we celebrate, משתה, שמחה, משלוח מנות, etc. ויכתוב מרדכי את הדברים האלה וישלח ספרים אל כל היהודים אשר בחרו בנות אחשוורוש הכתובים והרחוקים. And again, interesting, the Megillah seems to imply, על כן היהודים עושים את יום 14. Not necessarily yet. There was a formal decree, there was a formal enactment. This is what happened. Spontaneously, they celebrated it as a Yom Tov. Afterwards, Mordechai writes the letters, and now it becomes established. לקיים עליהם להיות עושים את יום 14 לחודש, ואת יום 15 בו, בכל שנה ושנה. Now, when it's established, not just the 14th, but also the 15th. So we have these 2 days. Just like the days when the Jews rested from their enemies. So again, we understand from the historical context, from the story of the Megillah, that it was in the Arei Prazim, the open cities, it was on the 14th that they rested, and that is therefore Purim de Prazim, and on the 15th was in Shushan, Shushan being the walled city, that is now Purim, Shushan Purim, or Purim de Mukafim, whatever you call it. The Gemara says, we celebrate Shushan Purim not just in Shushan, but in any city that is walled from the times of Achashverosh, according to one opinion. Another opinion says from the times of Yoshua bin Nun. And that is how we go. And the Gemara says, what about Shushan? Well, Shushan is part of the miracle, so therefore that's included as well. But it's all the cities that are walled cities from the times of Yoshua bin Nun. And that is when we have Shushan Purim. And as we mentioned a number of times, the only city where that we know that is for sure is Yerushalayim. I'm not getting into the discussion now of what is considered Yerushalayim and what part. It's a Mukhv Nireh and outskirts of the city. It's very interesting, by the way. I mean, you get a sense of how much the city has developed and how much we all know how much the city, how much building there is, because we all get stuck in the Pekakim every day. But if you think of Machaneh Yehuda, and there's that was going back 100 years ago. There was a shul next to Machaneh Yehuda where they would always be reading on Yud Dalet because that was not part of Jerusalem. That was the outside. That was in the desert. It's something amazing to think about. Today, everybody agrees that by Machaneh Yehuda you read on Tetvav, not on Yud Dalet. Okay, so that is. By the way, what has Yoshua bin Nun got to do with Purim? Right? Purim happened much later. So the Ritva writes something interesting. The Ritva writes, he says, Yoshua was the first one to fight against Amalek. Right? We're fighting against Amalek on Purim. Haman, the descendant of Amalek. Yoshua also fought against Amalek. We can think about what the connection is between those two, and etc. But that is that is the background. Okay, I'm going to now read you something from the Bi'alacha, something which is very unique, and this will give us a lot of confidence going forward in the rest of the shiur. But he says like this: we're now going to get into the sugya of ben ir shalach lekrach or ben krach shalach leir. So the Bi'alacha writes the following: the Shulchan Aruch says, Shulchan Aruch has a seif where he says ben ir shalach lekrach or ben krach shalach leir. Talks about im hayad olach zolem komo, im lo hayad olach zolem komo. Okay, we'll see it all in a moment. And there's a long piece in the Mishnah Berurah over here, but the Bi'alacha is also written by the Chavetz Chaim. He writes the following introduction to this whole sugya. He says, "Saif ze rabu pelotav meod." There are many details over here, many different parameters. Ayem purim megadim b'shalchonim ve'etakti b'Mishnah Berurah rak shitat Rashi sheskimu alei harbe rishonim. So they've only brought the most prevalent opinion. V'gam zeh b'kitzur nimratz, and only that also I brought very briefly. U'mikol makom lemaaseh ani mevakesh me'hakoreh shelo yismoch alai. Says the Bi'alacha. He says everything I've written. It's like when you have the some of the contemporary books. They open up in the front the kitzur, sifrei kitzur of halacha, whatever. They always write an introduction. They say lahalacha v'lo lemaaseh, which is a polite way of saying you can learn my book, but ask your local Orthodox rabbi what to do. Okay, so the Bi'alacha says unbelievable. The Bi'alacha, the Chavetz Chaim, right? The Mishnah Berurah. This is what we want to know halacha for the last over 100 years. We go to the Mishnah Berurah. He says, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. He says, don't rely on me. If we don't rely on him, who can we rely on? But you just get a sense of how complicated and how the sugya is. So etc. Now I'll just say, again, when the Chavetz Chaim over here is writing in Radin or wherever he is, and he's saying, don't rely on me, Le'inyan bracha, because he says, I'm writing in the synopsis, in the Mishnah Berurah, and the Bi'alacha, but these halachot are not relevant. Right? I'm writing to the best of my ability, but these are not practical. the Chavetz Chaim never had this shayla. But we do, because we're in your shayla. So again, these halachot have been developed, and we will come out with the halacha l'maaseh at the end of it. But I will say, again, these are very, very complicated. One thing that we're not going to be discussing, a person that needs to be aware that there are a number of different parameters that will affect the shayla, and one of them is what a person's intent. It happens on Purim. I'm told that it happens that sometimes people plan to do one thing on Purim and they end up doing something else. So I'm told that is a possibility. If your intent was to be in a certain place, and for whatever reason you planned on being in Yerushalayim, but you ended up somewhere else, or you planned on being there for the night, but you ended up staying somewhere else tonight, that can change everything. So all that we're going to be discussing in this year is where one's actions are going according to their original plans in terms of where you meant to be at which time. Okay, just so we're all clear. If it goes different to what the original intent was, then that can change everything. But it will get too complicated to go through it all. So let's look at the basic sources and see how this works. So the first thing is the Gemara says as follows, and again we'll talk about how this would happen in an ordinary year, ben ir shalach lekrach or ben krach shalach leir, which is a question every year because Purim is always on a different day in Yerushalayim to everywhere else, and then we'll see how Purim Mishulash maybe affects us. Just say, again, this is a very unique din that we only have by Purim. We don't have this anywhere else. I know you'll jump up at me and you'll say, what about Yom Tov Sheni Shal Galuyot? Right? It's true that we have a concept of Yom Tov Sheni, where in Chutz La'aretz, I have an extra day of Yom Tov, which I don't have in Eretz Yisrael. But again, that's an extra day. The first day of Yom Tov is the same. Everybody, whether you're in Israel, whether you're in Chutz La'aretz, this year you have the problem of Pesach, which is on Motzei Shabbat. Okay, don't worry, we'll have special shiurim to talk about that as well. Erev Pesach Shechal B'Shabbat. I mentioned that Surah Shlishit yesterday. These kind of things, the Balabatim hate them and the rabbis love them. So much Chomel Drush. I have a shiurim all built for me. I don't have to worry about anything. But in any event, but Purim is the only chag that we have where some people celebrate it on one day and some people celebrate it exclusively on another day. So that's where that's where it all gets, where it starts from. So as follows, we begin with the Gemara, we begin really with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows, and again, just to get the terminology, we're going to talk a lot about Ben Ir, and we talk a lot about Ben Krach. And it's a little bit confusing, but we have to remember, when we say Ir, we mean Areha Prazot. So when you think of Ir, think of Tel Aviv, or think of Modi'in, or think of Beit Shemesh, or that is the place that celebrates on Yud Dalid. Krach is another way of saying Krachim and Mukafim Choma, that is the enclosed cities, the walled cities. So Krach is Yerushalayim. So Ir is not Yerushalayim, Krach is Yerushalayim. That's how we can remember it. Okay, so says the Mishnah as follows. He says, Ben Il shalach leklach, uben klach shalach le'il. Okay, you have one status and you go to the other place. I'm a resident of Yerushalayim and I go to Modi'in. I'm a resident of Modi'in and I come to Yerushalayim on Purim. Which day, etc. I still don't know. But I go from one place to the other. That's the point. Says the Mishnah, if he's planning on going back to his original Thank you. Okay, I apologize to everybody who's watching on Zoom or on YouTube or wherever. The recording cut off. I have no idea where it cut off. We're just going to carry on. We're just going to carry on the share, and I hope you'll be able to follow. So Rava says, when the Mishnah says Atid Lachzor, that he's planning on going back, it means Atid Lachzor when? Beleilei Arba'asa. In other words, before the morning of the 14th of Purim. Yud Daled, which is the first day of Purim. While we go by the morning, we go by where I am by Alot HaShachar. The reason is because the main Kriya of the Megillah, although I have to hear the Megillah both at night and in the morning, the Ikar Kriya is in the day. Okay, it could be enough kamena if somebody's only able to hear it once or whatever reason. By the way, why is that? Why do we say the Ikar Kriya is the day? So there's an idea. It says that Chayav lishma et Megillah balayla v'lachzor v'lishnota bayom. I need to hear it at night and I need to go back and read it again during the day. And the understanding is the Megillah, everything is hidden. The whole story really makes no sense until you've gone to the end and you've seen the whole thing. So once we've heard the Megillah at night, we've gone from beginning to end, and we've seen how everything comes together. And now we go back and we read it again from the beginning with different eyes and a different lens. Then we can truly understand and we can truly follow along the story. Okay, it's a nice chazir Shavuot. So wherever you're going to be before Alot HaShachar, before daybreak, in other words, wherever you sleep the night of the 14th, that, according to Rava, is the determining factor. So the 14th is the day when the Ir, right, outside of Yerushalayim, that is the day that that's the day they're celebrating Purim. So according to this, what are we saying? Again, I'll read the Mishnah with what we now understand and see how it works. We said, Ben Ir shalach lekrach, u ben krach shalach la'ir. Im atid lachzor limkomo, korem imkomo. In other words, Rava says like this: wherever I'm going to be on the morning of the 14th, that is what's going to determine my status, which place I am. So if I am on the morning of the 14th outside of Yerushalayim, which is a place where I'm obligated to read, so then I would read the Megillah and I would fulfill all the mitzvot on the 14th. If on the morning of the 14th I'm going to be in Yerushalayim, so then it would seem that I'm not chayav to hear it because that's not the day when we read in Yerushalayim. That is so far the simple understanding of the Mishnah, right? If only it was that simple. Okay, we'll say like this. One problem with this is like this. The 14th, I understand, is the day which applies to the chiyuv outside of Yerushalayim. But when is the chiyuv of Purim in Yerushalayim? It's not on the 14th; it's on the 15th. So my question now is like this, and this is a big machloket between Rashi and the Rosh. Okay, when I say I determine the determining factor of when I need to celebrate Purim is where I am in the morning. Okay, which morning? Meaning, if on the morning of the 14th I am in one of the cities where it is Purim, so clearly that's the time of the chiyuv. But what about where I am on the 15th? Okay, so according to Rashi, we say like this. According to Rashi, there are 2 days I have to look at. I have to look at both the 14th and I have to look at the 15th, and I have to look at where I am on each of those days, and together that's going to determine what comes out of that. Is, we'll talk about in a moment, is that it's possible, according to Rashi, that a person could be chayav in Purim twice. If I say like that, if I say that on the 14th I'm in Beit Shemesh and on the 15th I'm in Yerushalayim, okay, certainly if I live in Yerushalayim, so then on the 14th I'm chayav for Purim in Beit Shemesh, and on the 15th I'm chayav for Purim in Yerushalayim, and then each day goes according to the chiyuv. The Rosh learns differently. The Rosh says, I don't go by the 2 dates. What determines when my chiyuv is for Purim? Where I am on the 14th, finished. So whether I'm from Yerushalayim or whether I'm from Beit Shemesh or wherever I live is irrelevant, according to the Rosh. Okay, wherever I am on the morning of the 14th, if on the morning of the 14th I am in Yerushalayim, then I'm going to be chayav on the 15th because that today is not my chiyuv. And if I'm somewhere else, then I'm going to be chayav on that day. I'll read you the language of the Rosh, because he says like this. He says, I only look at where I am on the 14th. It says, Kevan shebizman chiyuv kriyat b'nei mekoman eino imahem. If I'm a person, let's say a person lives in Modi'in, and they come to the morning of the 14th in a regular year. Again, this year everything's different because everybody's reading on the 14th anyway. But in a regular year, so a person from Modi'in is fine, sleeps over on the 14th of Adar, is in Yerushalayim. So in the morning of Purim, there's no chiyuv, there's no kriyat Megillah, there's no anything. So he says, even though he's going to be going back afterwards, this is the time of the chiyuv for Modi'in. Okay, but I know him, but he's not with them. You're in Yerushalayim, you're in the krach. So he says, nistalek me'alav chiyuv kriya, chiyuv anshay kriyat mekomo. He's therefore not part of that. He's not part of that chiyuv. And therefore, Nichlal b'nei krach, and he's included in the chiyuv of where he is. So what could come out, according to the Rosh, is something very, very strange. Comes out, according to him, is like this. The only date that determines where chiyuv is Yudalet. So let's say a person from Modi'in, according to this shita, comes to Yerushalayim, and they're in Yerushalayim the morning of Yudalet. So there's no Megillah here, so they're not chayav. Okay, so they don't hear the Megillah. And then they go back, before Tetvav, they go back to They go back to Modi'in. Okay, so he says where you were since on Yud Daled, you were not in Modi'in, you weren't chayev then, but therefore you're chayev the next day. So they would be chayev to read outside of Yerushalayim on the day that's not purim for anybody. According to Rashi, no, well, on Yud Daled you weren't there, on Tetvav you weren't there. But okay, but we're jumping the gun. But basically, what we've seen from now is the following. According to two opinions, according to the Rosh, I can only be chayav once for Purim. Where I am on Yud Daled determines it. If I'm on Yud Daled in a place that is now chayav for Purim, that is my chiyuv. If I'm in a place that is not now chayav for Purim, then my chiyuv automatically goes to Tetvav. It's got to be one or the other. It has to be one or the other, and it's only determined on the morning of the 14th.
He would be like in a situation where he would be somewhere where it's not important, and he would have to read Megillah.
Yeah. But we don't paskin like the Rosh. We don't paskin like the Rosh. We paskin like Rashi. And what Rashi says is, it's not so simple that I just determine on one day, I determine on both days. I look at where I am on Yud Daled, and I look at where I am on Tetvav. Okay, and that where I am on Yud Daled determines if I have a chiyuv on Yud Daled, and where I am on Tetvav determines if I have a chiyuv on Tetvav. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of the cases that come out of this, a couple of the differences between Rashi and Rosh that will help us understand, and then we'll get to the case of Purim Mishulash as well. Okay, so the first difference between them, I've already mentioned, is can a person be chayav twice for Purim? Okay, according to the Rosh, say no, you can only be chayav once. So wherever I am, if on Yud Daled I'm chayav, then I do it on Yud Daled, on Tetvav I'm not. And if I'm not chayav on Yud Daled, I'm automatically going to be chayav on Tetvav. According to Rashi, no. According to Rashi, it works that wherever I am if I am on Yud Daled in a place that is chayav now, I'll be chayav now, and if I come back to Yerushalayim and I'm on Yerushalayim and for Tetvav, then I'm going to be chayav there as well. This, by the way, the halachic jargon for this idea of somebody being in the place where, but I'm not, even if I'm not a resident, it's what we call paruz ben yomo or mukaf ben yomo. We're used to hearing ben yomo when you're talking about pots. We're not talking about pots. Nobody's cooking, yeah, right? It's not, but ben yomo means on the day. Means it's not just about where I live, but it's where I live, so to speak, for the day of Purim. If for the day of Purim I'm in the city that is of Yud Daled, that's called a paruz ben yomo. If on the day of Tetvav I'm in Yerushalayim, that's what's called a mukaf ben yomo. So according to Rashi, you could be chayav twice. So this is a very common case. Let's say somebody who lives in Modi'in, Beit Shemesh, Rosh Monaim, wherever. Okay, they are there. They're at home for Yud Daled. Okay, you're a ben ir. Now the ben ir halach lekrach. So Yud Daled, the night you've heard the Megillah during the day, you've had your Suda, you've had everything, and now you want to come in to for Tetvav. You want to come celebrate Purim in Beit Knesset Nasi. Okay, so who does it, right? So therefore, it would seem you've already fulfilled Purim, but now if you're going to come and sleep over that night, you're going to have to do everything again. You're going to have to hear the Megillah 4 times, not just twice. Again, not this year. This year there's only 2 Megillah. Okay, that's what it would seem according to Rashi. However, and there's actually a Yerushalmi that seems to support this. The Yerushalmi writes, it says Ben Il. Ben Ir is Beit Shemesh Latzorach Ha'inyan. Shakal dirato leilei 15, who for the night of the 15th moved, right, and came to Yerushalayim, says the Yerushalmi nitchayev kan v'kan. You are obligated twice. Okay, so that's what it would seem. However, comes Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. Rav Frank was the Rav of Yerushalayim. Okay, and Rav Frank said the following. He said, actually, if you look carefully in the Yerushalmi, what's the language that it uses? It doesn't say Ben Ir shalach mi makom lemakom. It says the language is Ben Ir she'akar dirato. Akar dirato means you moved. You didn't go to have a Purim party somewhere else. You moved. You lived it. So he says the Yerushalmi is talking about a very specific case. It's saying that a person, the person who lives in Beit Shemesh decided to move to Yerushalayim, not for Purim, but they moved permanently. They got to move on Purim. I guess it was cheaper, whatever it was. So they moved on that day. So when Yud Daled, they were a resident of Beit Shemesh. And now already the night of Tetvav, they're a resident of Yerushalayim. In that case, you'd be chayav twice. Okay, but ordinarily, a person, if I live in Beit Shemesh, so I celebrated Purim on Yud Daled, now I come to Yerushalayim. I'm finished. I've done Purim. Not going to be chayav again, certainly according to the Rosh, but even according to Rashi. Okay, so that is the Shita of Rav Frank, and that's important to know that exists. Again, so plugging into our situation now, let's say somebody, your children or your grandchildren or whoever who are in Beit Shemesh or in Modi'in and are going to celebrate their Purim on Friday, they're going to have their Suda in the morning and they want to come here for Shabbos. Okay, so they've already had Purim. They would come here. What would be the nafkamina? Again, everybody's already heard the Megillah, so they don't have to do that again. The nafkamina would be ala nisim. They'd be sitting in shul and the Chazan will clap on the bima and say ala nisim, and they have to remember to forget ala nisim because they already said it yesterday because it's not for them. Again, but if that's somebody who's already celebrated Purim. Okay, so that is the one case. That is the case of whether you could be chayav twice. That what we've seen. It seems to be according to most poskim, either based on the Rosh or based on Rav Frank, that we would not be chayav once we've fulfilled all the obligations on Yud Daled. So we're done. Okay. Again, this is all talking about a ben ir. This is talking about somebody who's not a resident of Yerushalayim. It's a resident from elsewhere, and they came here. Okay. Could you be another question here, which the poskim discuss, is could you be exempt from Purim totally? Okay, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but could you be exempt? Could you not have to do it at all? So even if there is we can find a scenario, we can find a constellation where you might be. All the poskim say this is not a good idea. Don't do that. It's never going to be agreed. You're going to. We're not looking to uproot our mitzvah. But again, according to the Rosh, it's clear that no such scenario exists because the Rosh said there's only one time that determines it's where I am in the morning of Yud Daled. So if I'm in a place, either I'm chayav today or I'm by elimination chayav tomorrow. That's the way it is. But according to Rashi, it would seem that there is such a situation whereby. Where if I was on Yud Daled in Yerushalayim and I was on Tetvav outside of Yerushalayim, then maybe I would be exempt on both days. However, it's not so simple. Here we have to distinguish between where a person starts off, where a person is a resident of, okay, and then we have to say. So we say like this: if a person is a ben ir, meaning a person lives outside of Yerushalayim, so you would be chayav on Yud Daled, right? So even if you come in, so you're in okay. So if a person is a ben ir, so it's chayav for Yud Daled, then you'd come into if you were in Yerushalayim on the morning of Yud Daled, you would be at that point we would say you would be mukaf ben yomo, okay. Maybe. I don't know, we'll get there. Well, Mukaf ben Yomo means that I'm for today considered as part of Yerushalayim. But when am I considered as part of Yerushalayim? It's only when it's Purim in Yerushalayim, which is Tetvav. Okay, so let's do the scenario. You'll see in a moment how absurd it is. I live in Beit Shemesh, so my Purim is Yud Daled. Okay. So on Yud Daled, I come to Jerusalem. So right now, it's not Purim. On Tetvav, I go back home to Beit Shemesh. So again, now it's still not Purim. Okay, so you'll say a person is going to be completely exempt. The person didn't have Purim. Okay, but why doesn't that make sense? Because we only say that you're from outside Yerushalayim. This isn't your hometown. You come here and you join and you are considered a mukaf ben yomo. You're considered part of the chiyuv of Yerushalayim to join in Purim on the day. So that's according to the Shita that would say, on Yud Daled, I was at home. When I'm here on Tetvav, but if I'm not here on Tetvav, so how can I be considered part of Yerushalayim for Purim? Because I'm not here. So therefore, in that scenario, so this is a very, very strange situation whereby a person who lives in a city which should celebrate on Yud Daled, but if I happen to, so this is why the poskim say don't do this. Don't be in the scenario because it's really not clear. That would be the situation where on Yud Daled you're in Yerushalayim, but you'd actually be chayav in Purim, even though no one here is chayav in Purim because you're not going to be here on Tetvav. Okay, I hope everybody is suitably confused. Right? Very, 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 very confusing case. The point is that somebody who lives in the Ir, who lives in a place where you should celebrate Purim and Yud Daled, don't get into a position where you're not there in Yud Daled and you're not in Yerushalayim on Tetvav. That's the case. That's very, very problematic, and we don't know what to do. The other case, the opposite way, where we would say that the only way we could conceivably say where a person would be really exempt from both is this case. Is the case of somebody who lives in Yerushalayim, right? So for Yud Daled, you're in Yerushalayim, you're at home, which is not Purim. And then on the day of Tetvav, which now should be Purim, you go outside of Yerushalayim. Yeah, seemingly you'd be completely exempt, and that would be Purim. The poskim say as well not to do that. Okay, those are basically the two cases where I'm not on the day of the chiyuv in either place where it should be, and then it's very, 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 very confusing. But that's generally not the case we're speaking about. Yeah. What? That's not according to the Rosh, you would have. Yeah, right. According to the Rosh, right. So that's part of the reason why, because according to the Rosh, there's no such scenario where I can be completely exempt. So if I find myself on day A where I'm in a situation where I should be exempt, and I be in a situation where I should be exempt, but I have to be chayiv at some point. So therefore, that is a situation completely to be avoided. Yeah.
Aren't we like mostly in general terms that it's like you can buy only day where you spend the night?
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
So
Which case
So you say that, you say when you get up in the morning, like we spend the night.
Well,
Difference.
again, where we say is where I am in the morning, meaning where I am when the day begins. Essentially, where meaning where I was the night.
So you can't. So you say that it's still because we don't have a scenario where you meet twice. Like, I mean, wouldn't you actually like do that group? Like it was, wake up in the morning, you know, wake up like not meeting that this year, but like.
Again, the scenario where one would be just to summarize, the scenario where one would be conceivably chayav twice is the following. It's when on the day of Yudalid I'm in the place which is chayav on Yudalid, and on the day of Tetvav I'm in the place which is chayav on Tetvav, which means on the night of Yudalid there I sleep in Beit Shemesh, okay, and so I'm still in Beit Shemesh there in the morning, regardless of whether I live in Beit Shemesh or whether I live in Yerushalayim. I'm there, and then I'm chayav. Okay, then on the day of Tetvav, meaning the night of Tetvav, I come and I sleep in Yerushalayim, and I'm here in the morning. So then I would be chayav. So that's why I would say I would be chayav both. However, that was the point, and that was the Yerushalmi. That was exactly the Yerushalmi. That's what Yerushalmi said. That if I'm a ben ir who moves from one to the other, the question is: once I've already fulfilled the chiyuv once, can I say that I really need to fulfill the chiyuv again? That's going to be the discussion. Huh? Yeah. Yes.
First of all, so when you say morning,
Yeah.
you mean when you wake up.
Right. I'm sorry. I should have clarified that. Yeah.
All the mitzvot on Friday this year, you're valid. Then you want to go for Shabbos where you live, Yerushalayim. You say Al Hanisim, what?
So let's talk about this year. Now that we've got more or less the basics. Let's see. This year gets a little bit complicated. Okay. And for the following reason, we've just said that what determines in the Area Prazim is where you're on Yudalit, and what determines in the Mukafin and the Krachim in Yerushalayim is where you're on Tetvav. Why? Because that's the day in each where I read the Megillah. What happens this year? Something very strange. Everybody reads the Megillah at the same time. It's always very strange when Jews all do the same thing. Okay? So this year we all read the Megillah. Now we all read the Megillah on Yudalit. So the question is this: do I say that Yudalit now, where I am on the day of the Megillah, is the only determining factor? Or do I say no? Really, we're reading the Megillah on Friday because we can't read it on Shabbos. But really, the Ikar of Purim is still on Shabbat. What's the proof of that? When do we say Al Hanisim? On Shabbat. So do I still say that what determines whether I'm chayav in Yerushalayim is going to be where I am on Shabbat? Or do I say it only depends on where I am on Friday? That's exactly our question. That's what we need to now try and figure out. And again, the nafkamina between it will be Matanot Levyonim, Kriyat Megillah. Everybody does the same thing. Everybody does Thursday night and Friday Megillah. Everybody does Matanot Levyonim on Friday. That is no question. The difference is going to be, number one, my Purim Surah and my Matanot Levyonim. Do I have to do that on Friday, or do I have to do that on Sunday, or do I have to do that on both? And Al Hanisim. Am I saying Al Hanisim on Friday, or am I saying Al Hanisim on Shabbat, or am I saying Al Hanisim on both? Right? That's exactly the question. So how do I determine when it comes to which? Essentially, what we're asking is which day is the real Purim in Yerushalayim? Right? Is it Friday or is it Shabbos? Everybody agrees that it's not Sunday. Okay, so this is important. Meaning wherever I am on Sunday morning, even though we're doing the Purim Surah on Sunday, but that's irrelevant in terms of determining. So if a person's in Beit Shemesh or Modi'in for Friday and for Shabbos, okay, or whatever they've done the whole thing. They want to come to Yerushalayim on Sunday for the Suda, they can come on Sunday. They can have it, but there's no mitzvah, there's no chiyuv, there's no right. That's that. So here we have essentially a machloket between Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach on the one hand and the other contemporary poskim on the other hand. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says this year everything goes by Friday. Everything is decided based on Yom Shishi, based on the day that we read the Megillah, and that is what determines. And therefore, if a person is according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, if a person is a resident of Yerushalayim and they're in Yerushalayim on Friday morning, so that's what determines. Even if I then leave for Shabbat, okay, and I'm somewhere else, but I would still say Al Anisim on Shabbat, and I would still have to have my Surah on Sunday, even outside of. So I could have a situation whereby somebody is having a Purim Surah on Sunday outside of Yerushalayim, but in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the Surah, right? It's very, 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 very strange. But that is how Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says everything is based on where I am on Friday morning, where I sleep on Thursday night and Friday. That's the only determining factor. Okay, so he says that this is unique. This is unique to Purim Mishrash. Other poskim, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Rav Ovadia, Rav Kenigsberg, Rav Eliashiv, they all say no. They say there is no difference. There is no difference between this year and other years, and therefore, outside of Yerushalayim, it's determined based on the 14th, based on where I am on Friday morning. But regarding Yerushalayim, is also is dependent on where I am on Shabbat. Okay, so according to this opinion, it would work like this: if I am a resident of Yerushalayim, so I was here. So let's say I live in Yerushalayim, and I decided to go on Thursday night to go to Beit Shemesh, right, or Modi'in, or wherever. So I'm there on, again, Kriyat Megillah, I hear on Thursday night, I hear on Friday morning, there's no problem. Do not leave your name, I give on Friday, there's no problem. Okay? But if I'm sleeping there in the ear, so on Friday I'm chayev, therefore, in all the mitzvot of Purim, and therefore on Friday I would have to have my Seudah, should do it in the morning, and I would have to do my Mishloach Manot, and I would say Al Anisim. Already on Thursday night, Friday I would say Al Anisim. Okay? Then I decide to come back home. for Shabbat. Well, I had planned on coming back home for Shabbat, and I come back home for Shabbat. So according to, if we say that where I'm sleeping on Shabbat is the determining factor of Shabbat, which is what these poskim say, then I would be chayiv everything again. So then I would have to say, then I would have to go back, and I would have to say Al Anisim again on Shabbat, and I would have to have another Suda on Sunday. That is according to many of the poskim. Like I said before, according to Rav Shlomo Zalman, doesn't work that way. According to Rav Shlomo Zalman, this year it's only dependent on where I am on Friday morning, and that would be that would be that. So let me just let me just mention. Let me go through the different cases. Just to summarize, because I know it was quite complicated, but it's this is in the Sefer of Rav Rimon. If people are interested, I'm happy to share as well afterwards. Here he has this table which goes through the different scenarios. There's really only two cases where there's a difference between Rav Shlomo Zalman and the other poskim, and the other cases are going to be the same. So we say like this. If on the 14th, meaning so one case is as follows: if on the 14th, right, so Thursday night, Friday, I am ba'ir, in other words, I am outside of Yerushalayim, and I come back to Yerushalayim for Shabbat, okay? So again, if we're talking about a resident, if I live in Yerushalayim, I decided to Thursday night, Friday, not to be here. I decided to go and be in Modi'in or Beit Shemesh or Tel Aviv or Eilat or wherever you want to go. Okay, but I come back for Shabbat. So according to what we just said, according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, you had your Purim on Friday, and that's it. You come back and it's a normal Shabbos, no Al Anisim, no nothing. Okay. According to the other poskim, you would have to do both. You would have to do Purim there, and I have to do Purim again. So I'd have to do Al Anisim again, and I have to have a Suda again, and I have to have Mishloach Manot again. Practically speaking, what should a person do? Okay, so it's good to it's good to do both. But if whatever a person can of course rely on Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach to have only done it once. That is one case that's different. Okay, the other case which is different, is the following: where a person, let's say a person who's not a resident of Yerushalayim, person's a resident of Beit Shemesh or Tel Aviv or Modi'in, okay, and they decide to come Thursday night, Friday, they decide to come here. They decide to spend Purim here in Yerushalayim, and then they go back. They go back for Shabbat. So according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, since everything goes by Friday, where whoever was in Yerushalayim sleeping on Thursday night, Friday, has Purim on Friday, and then even though they've gone back home, they would still have to say Al Nisim, which they haven't said yet, on Shabbat, and they would still have the Suda on Sunday. According to the other poskim, they would say no, and they would say actually you have already fulfilled all your mitzvot on Friday, so you have to. Okay, so that is a little bit of a complicated case, but that essentially is what we have. Okay, I hope people aren't too confused. I know this is quite a tricky discussion. There were a couple of practical questions. Maybe people wanted to just mention again the practical cases, and we'll see if we can tell the bottom line. Bottom line, yeah.
If you are young, 14, you with the kids outside
Yerushalayim.
For Shabbos, what do you do? Shabbos, Sunday, what is your feeling?
Okay, so your case is you are Thursday night, Friday. You live. So let's break it down. You live in Yerushalayim. Point number one. Number two, Thursday night, Friday, you are sleeping outside of Yerushalayim. Shabbat, you come back, and Shabbat, you're going to be back in Yerushalayim. So that exactly is the case. That is the machloket between Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and all the other poskim. According to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, since Friday morning you were not in Yerushalayim, that's the only day that determines. Therefore, your chiyuv is on Thursday night and Friday to do everything. To do everything on Friday means mishloach manot, matanot levyonim, suda, al nisim, everything. That's what he says. Person wants to rely on that. Person can rely on that, and therefore you do everything. You come back home. Shabbat, you're here, and you don't have to do anything on Sunday. However, the other poskim say that you would still, meaning everybody agrees. Let's put it this way: everybody agrees Thursday night, Friday, you're chayav. So you have to hear the Megillah, you have to have the Suda, you have to give mashloach manot, you have to say al nisim, you have to do everything. The question is, when you come back for Shabbat, do you have to do it all again? Do you have to say al nisim again, and do you have to do the Suda, and do you have to do it again? So according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, no, I don't. I'm done. I did it once and I'm finished. According to most of the other poskim nowadays, say yes, you have to do it again. So we would say like this: we'd say the best thing to do in that scenario is regarding al nisim, you can add it on. Maybe not to say it's at the point where we say, but maybe to add it on at the end. You add on al nisim at the end of your Amida, okay, and you would add it on at the end of Birkat Hamazon. There's a part where if a person forgot al nisim, they can add it on, okay, because that's not actually part of the original bracha. So there's no question that you could say it there. It's not considered a hefzek. You can have another Suda on Sunday, and you can have another. You can give a mishloach manot to be yotze. And zep. But it's easy because of Mikra Megillah. We've already heard it. We don't have to do it again.
So you being our local Orthodox.
Yes.
And someone said, I want a definite answer of what I should do. Is that what you say you should do?
That's what I'm saying. That's the France. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you don't lose any. You're not losing anything by adding in al nisim at a point where it's not going to be a hefsek. You're not losing anything by giving. You don't have to go and give 55 mishloach manot. Okay, you don't have to go and give 55 mishloach manot. But you go and give the basic mitzvahs of chorma. That's okay.
But even in that scenario, you couldn't say to yourself that since I'm going to have to go since when I get home anyway, you don't have to eat them on Friday morning. Right? You would still have to do.
No. So you would correct. You would have to do them on Friday. You have to do them on Friday. The only question is whether you have to come and do them again. That's the.
Why couldn't you ever do the dinner again? Come Friday afternoon into Yerushalayim. According to the road posting, maybe you should do the Megillah again as well.
No, but why would you have to do the Megillah again? You've heard again. The question was asked: if I was outside, everybody's reading the Megillah at the same time. It's not a din on where I hear the Megillah. I hear it there. It's the same Megillah. That's fine. That I don't have to do it. You know, there are people who have again. This is not halacha, but there are those. For example, I've heard certain stories of somebody who went to Chutz La'aretz and they came back to Eretz Yisrael. So they got Yad before the day, so they put on tefillin again because it's not the same doing it in Chutz La'aretz, it's the same as doing it in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, again, that's not required. Make Haradin, certainly. You heard that even though Yerushalayim is a Kodesh and has a high level of Kedusha, the fact that you heard the Megillah outside is okay. You don't have to hear it again when you come back. Okay. Bottom line, just to summarize and to conclude, stay in Yerushalayim, don't go anywhere. Okay. No, but in all seriousness, again. So again, we said Thursday night and Friday we have to hear the Megillah wherever we are. We're in Yerushalayim, we're outside Yerushalayim, we're coming, we're going, whatever. Thursday night, hear the Megillah. Friday, hear the Megillah. Friday, give you a matanot levyonim. If you're outside Yerushalayim, Thursday night and Friday, so then you need to say Al Anisim, you need to do the other mitzvot as well. If not, or if you come back, right, in Yerushalayim on Shabbos, we say Al Anisim, on Sunday we have Hasudan, Matanot Levyonim, and that's it. So we went to Purim Shalash again for another 20 years. So.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
There was a group of people